and from thy kindred, because all your cousins them worship these idols. And from thy father, oh, your daddy too? Okay. And from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. Verse 2. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and I will, I'm going to make your name great. God is supposed to make me significant. See, if I'm trying to make myself significant, every time I'm around you, I'm going to talk about myself so much because I'm trying to make my tower higher than yours so that you can look at me and be in awe of how great my tower is because I'm trying to make my name great. But when God is making your name great, I'm not jealous of anybody else's tower. Because I got a tower and I ain't built it. So I don't struggle, man. I don't struggle when anything threatens my name, threatens my tower, because the one that gave me the name in the first place, the one that gave me significance in the first place, certainly he can raise me up out of insignificance and put me back in the place where I'm reputable and respected again. See, I'm not threatened. The world can't threaten me by saying, I'm going to take this away and you ain't going to have this no more. And you ain't nobody going to know you. And, you're going to lose this account. And you can't threaten me with all of that. And as long as you're threatened by that, you'll be controlled, man. You'll be controlled by the devil. And all he's trying to do is to get you to worship your reputation. Yes, that's right. To worship your significance. To worship your popularity. And God told Abraham, this man that had been serving idols, he told him, he said, look, get out of here and I will give you significance. Your life is going to mean something. If you just listen to me and let your heart be rooted in what I tell you, then I will give your life significance. Wow. This is so powerful to me. Let's look at Hebrews. Because the book of Hebrews begins to help us understand exactly what it was that Abraham was looking for when he left his country. Hebrews chapter 11, verse number 8. Verse 8 says, by faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out not knowing whither he went. Verse 9. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. Verse 10. For he looked for a city. So when Abraham left, he left there looking for a city. Now, so let me just go back and recap a little bit. We found that when Cain was banished from the presence of God, he left there and he established a city and then named it after his son so that he could make a name for himself, a reputation for himself, so he could give himself significance. And we saw the people in Babylon doing the same thing. At that Tower of Babel, it was in Babylon, and they were doing the exact same thing, wanting to establish a city to make a reputation for themselves. And actually, I didn't read it all, but if you go back and look at Genesis chapter 4, starting there at verse number 16, and you read about Cain, you'll find out that not only did Cain establish a city without the presence of God, that he and his children then went on to establish industry without the presence of God, art without the presence of God, our agriculture without the presence of God. And so they established a whole civilization where God was not involved. In other words, they established something to make themselves a name, to give themselves a reputation, to make themselves significant. And just to kind of give you a little window to peek through, so what they were saying, because they made music. It talked about Cain's son that played certain instruments. And so they're saying, if I can make this good enough, then I'll make myself a reputation, because other people will flock to music. They don't care that it's without the presence of God. So I build myself a following of people without the presence, the power, the wisdom of God. And that'll make me significant. So we have Cain doing that, and then we had Nimrod. Nimrod was the head of Babylon and the building of that city. And we had Nimrod doing the same thing without God. In fact, I'm going to make me a tower that reached to heaven. And so there's God Almighty over there. And then there's Nimrod over here, who is like God. Isn't that what the serpent told Eve? You'll be like God. And so we find Abraham here in Hebrews chapter 11. Look at verse 10 again. It says, for he looked for a city which hath foundations. Come on, man. He looked for a city that's deeply rooted and firmly planted, that cannot be moved, whose builder and maker is God. He wasn't looking for a city that didn't have God. He wasn't looking for an industry where God wasn't involved. He wasn't looking to hide the fact that he served God, that God used him and God spoke to him and that he loved God. He wasn't trying to hide any of those things. But he was looking for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Drop down to verse 13. So, you know, Hebrews chapter 11 talks about the people of faith, the children of Israel. Verse 13 says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims where? On the earth. Verse 14. For they that say such things, they that say that they're strangers and pilgrims on the earth, what's up with them? Well, they that say things like that, they declare plainly that they seek a country. Verse 15, let's make that plain. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from which they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. Verse 16. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. God's got a city for them. And so now look at this. It says these people died in faith, not having received the promise of the city. But they were fully persuaded that the city exists. So they continued to live as people whose foundations and whose home was in that city. Therefore, I have no desire or need to make a reputation for myself, because I trust the one who laid the foundation of the city where I'm from. I trust him to make my name and make my own reputation. He makes a reputation for me. Yeah. All right, I'm going to look for a place to close. Now, when you look at the book of Genesis, you'll see a couple of things. You'll see people establishing their own significance without God. And you'll see God establishing significance for people. And so you have, like in the second half of Genesis, you have the Tower of Babel. Then you have Abraham. So you got the Babylonians trying to build a tower that reached to heaven. Then you have Abraham, who God called out of an ungodly place that worship idols. And he told him to just wander until you find the city and the place that I have for you. And then in the last half of Genesis, you have this guy Joseph. And Joseph is interesting because Joseph understands that God has said he's going to make his name great. And then Joseph goes to a city that's full of wickedness, and God elevates him and makes his name great. All right. Interesting, too. He makes his name great in a city that he's not from. Right? All right. Let's try to bring this to a close. The book of Revelation. The book of Revelation mentions two cities. It's so outstanding. Turn to Revelation chapter number 17. The book of Revelation mentions two cities. I'm just going to tell you. It mentions Babylon and New Jerusalem. Babylon and New Jerusalem. So let's look at Babylon, chapter 17, verse number 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So every, let me try to keep this PG. Every idolatrous behavior to worship something other than God, the mother of it is Babylon. And the motivation behind it is making a name for myself, giving myself significance. And I don't care whether it's an idea or it's a political ideology or I don't care whether it's who you know or where you work or how much stuff you can accumulate. I don't care what it is that people have found to invest themselves in that they believe gives them a name and significance. Babylon is the mother of it. And in chapter 18, I'm not going to take time to go through, but you can read through. Just search Babylon in the book of Revelation. It'll show you that Babylon is judged. And it's this whole idea of giving myself significance and meaning. So I got to find my meaning in God, man. I got to let God give my life meaning. Do you know it's so much more secure? Because all those other things can be taken away from you, and then where's your significance? Your significance is gone. If your significance is in your job and all of a sudden you get laid off, you have no significance. Your significance in your family, and all of a sudden you find out your spouse is cheating and want to marry somebody else, then where's your significance? If your significance is in your stuff,